Hey guys, welcome back to Rivian Updates. My name is Isaiah. We got our first sneak peek of the Gen 2 Quad Max with native NACS and bringing back from the dead Launch Green. I am super excited. Marquez Brownlee posted a short video on his Instagram kind of teasing his Gen 2 Quad Max review. And of course, in this video, we see a Gen 2 Quad Max Launch Green R1T with native NACS, of course, sporting those super sport wheels. That's what these wheels are called. They're called the super sports with those nice blue cyan calipers. But I am excited. We are finally getting native NACS in the next model year of Rivians. That was totally expected. But Launch Green, I don't think that was totally on everyone's radar. Of course, Launch Green came with the launch edition of the Gen 1 quads back in 2021 and 2022. Of course, once the launch edition sold out, there were no more orders for that. That was discontinued. Alongside that being discontinued was Compass Yellow, but we actually saw in the public, we've seen other Rivian colors, particularly that new purple that has been spotted on a quad, which makes me think, what other colors could we see be introduced by Rivian, and could they be bringing other colors back from the dead? I'm talking about Compass Yellow. I want to see Compass Yellow back. That would make me super excited. But native NACS is a big moment. For some reason, a lot of people really just want native NACS on the Rivians. They don't want to use an adapter. The only difference is the charge port for this 2026 R1 is still in the same location as the previous model years and generations. Meaning, whether or not you have an adapter, the experience is going to be exactly the same. You're going to pull in, you're going to have to end up taking two spots, and that's going to maybe make you feel weird, maybe inconvenience some Tesla owners or other people who are looking to charge. But the point being, the charge port is still in the front driver's front. And so this makes it easier for drivers to just come out of the vehicle, plug right in. This means you don't have to unhitch if you're towing something when you're looking to charge. You just pull in forward. Maybe it would have made sense to move the charge port on the opposite side of the vehicle. That would be the front passenger right. And that would allow you to pull in, not have to unhitch. You do, as a driver, have to kind of walk around the vehicle, but you do make the vehicle charge port location compatible with version 3 Tesla superchargers, which is really the big bottleneck here. And why I truly don't believe that we should have native NACS on vehicles yet. I think we should probably keep the adapters for at least another year or two until we start to see version 4 Tesla superchargers, or at least other infrastructure from the likes of Iona or Electrify America that are using native NACS cables. With that being said, I know a lot of people, probably you watching, really we're just waiting for a native NACS Rivian, and so that will be coming with the next model year, which is finally pleasing to say. But yeah, it's not a small port, unlike what we kind of see on the R2, where the port was kind of hidden really nicely and it wasn't huge because it doesn't need to fit CCS1. So you could just see that they've just pretty much replaced where the CCS port was with a NACS port. But at least in this case, right, they're just trying to make production pretty simple. They don't need to pretty much change the fender and the front bumper. You just replace where the CCS port was with a North American charging standard port. Now, it seems, according to Rivian forums, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has already posted the VIN decoder, or at least Rivian has, of the 2026 model year Rivians, which means that they're already in some sort of EPA testing, traffic safety testing phase, which means that we are really close to these coming out. I mean, exactly a year ago, we saw the Gen 2 Rivians come out. And exactly a year ago, that's when we saw the introduction of the Gen 2 Quad, which means really it's been a year Rivian. We got to see Gen 2 Quad pretty soon. And as of my last videos, I kind of commented on it. I think we're going to see the Gen 2 Quad really soon, at least within the next month or two, at least by the end of the summer is what I'm anticipating. And I am really excited. Now, moving on from native NACS, which we knew was happening and is really important, and besides Launch Green and maybe a new purple color that we may be seeing in the future, I do want to talk about the Quad Max. I don't think the Quad Max really makes much sense, other than it being a really high margin vehicle that Rivian can kind of tout and show that they can beat the Tesla Model X in a 0 to 60 time and power, and it's got all of this performance. But aesthetically, it is exactly the same as the Tri-Max and the Dual Max and the Dual Large and the Dual Standard. Besides the fact that you are getting a quad badge, you are getting the Speed Gear Guard Gary badge, you're not really getting much more, right? And what we see with other automakers, right? For instance, Ford, they have the Ford F-150, they have the King Ranch, they have the LT, kind of go up, then you get, the Raptor. And aesthetically, the F-150 Tremor, which is another off-road trim that they have, isn't aesthetically the same as the Ford Raptor. And I just wish that maybe Rivian would up the ante when it comes to the Quad Max. I'm talking about a crazy suspension, maybe wide the fenders a little bit more, give it a little bit of a different front look, maybe change the front bumper. I'm talking about a little bit of a different interior. Just change it more, because the Tri-Max and the Quad Max are so close to each other, especially from what we know in price. We're expecting the Quad Max to start at about $115,000 for the R1T and then $120,000 for the R1S. That is not far off from the $100,000 and $105,000 starting price of the R1T and R1S Tri-Max respectively. And so I think it kind of dilutes how good the Quad Max is when the Tri-Max is right there with a 2.9 second 0 to 60. Some people have recorded 2.8s. Okay, you're getting more range than the Quad. You're not getting the super sport wheels. You're not getting the blue accents. You're not getting maybe a few other software features that maybe Rivian will hold just for the Quad. But everything else, aesthetically, it is a Rivian. And this is what makes the Tri-Max such a good appeal, such a good vehicle. And maybe that's what Rivian is trying to do. They're trying to persuade people to continue to buy the Tri-Max. They want people to buy their higher margin vehicle. It only uses one enduro motor. We know that Rivian had a bottleneck with their enduro motors when they had like those coil windings, and that was an issue with production, but they continued to produce the Tri-Max because the Tri-Max doesn't need two enduro motors like the dual motor vehicles. It just needs one because it also uses an Ascent motor. And so the Tri-Max has all the premium trims, the Ascend trim, nice interiors, right? You get more paint options like that Storm Blue, and you do get launch mode. And so the Tri-Max compared to the Quad and the Dual Max is just really a good offering. It's in that sweet spot. If you really want performance, the Quad Max is going to be it. If you want the most range, Dual Max is going to be where it's at. But Tri-Max is truly the sweet spot. But again, that dilutes how good the Quad Max is, at least to me. And at this point, we know it's not going to happen, but I wish Rivian would make the Quad Max a little more crazy. At least that's what I think. Those are my opinions about the Quad Max. But this is exciting. We're getting the Quad Max, guys. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Quad Max. What other colors may you be expecting? What colors do you want to see? We know Rivian has their new paint shop coming online. That's also supposed to help with R2. I can't remember if this is something that RJ or another executive at Rivian said, but the bottleneck of paint had a lot to do with the paint shop. With this new paint shop, they'll be able to produce more colors, have more options, and it not affect production as now with the current paint shop. So we could be seeing a ton of new colors very, very soon. But what color would you like to see? Me personally, I want to see the return of Compass Yellow, and I would like to see a racing red. The current red we have, Canyon Red, is a great red, but in some lighting conditions, it can be almost orange, and then in darkened conditions, it could really be a red. But the way it looks, especially with this metallic, it just looks like a red canyon, like the Grand Canyon. Right? They call it red, but really it's orange. So I would like to see a racing red, a Ferrari red, a deep Rivian red. That would make me super, super happy. But I'm curious what other colors you would like. We're getting NACS. We're getting back launch green. Quad Max is on its way. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Rivian Updates. My name is Isaiah, and I'll see you guys in the next one.